Hello and warmly welcome to this explainer. Today, we are stepping back in time to explore a deeply blessed, really awe-inspiring era in Islamic history. We're going to look closely at the childhood of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and specifically his time spent out in the remote, rugged desert of Banu Saad. This isn't just some dry historical recounting. It's a profound look at how divine intervention completely transformed a barren landscape and a destitute family into this epic center of unprecedented miracles. So get ready, because the sheer scale of the blessings we're about to discuss is absolutely captivating.
Okay, let's dive right into this with a quote from his foster mother, Halima Sa'dia, that just gives me chills. She said, "By God, this is not a lamp, but the light of the blessed face of this orphan child that has illuminated my home." Just pause and imagine that for a second. We are talking about a household so impoverished that they literally couldn't afford a single drop of oil to light a lamp. Yet, suddenly, their home is radiating so much light that the neighbors are utterly baffled. This is the phenomenon of the Nur-e Nabuwa, the light of prophethood. But to truly appreciate the magnitude of this miraculous moment, we kind of need to rewind a bit and understand exactly how the prophet, peace be upon him, ended up in Halima's care in the first place.
Section 1. The ancient Meccan custom and the severe drought.
So let's step back and look at the world they lived in. Wealthy Meccan families had this ancient, highly respected custom of sending their newborns out to the deep desert. They'd be raised by Bedouin tribes to get a really robust upbringing and, pure exposure to the Arabic language. But the year our story takes place, the desert was suffering a severe, brutal drought. When the women of Banu Saad arrived in Mecca, they easily scooped up infants from wealthy families who could shower them with generous gifts and financial support. But when they were introduced to Muhammad, peace be upon him, they turned away simply because he was an orphan. And then there was Halima Sa'dia, the poorest of them all, completely destitute, empty-handed, and struggling just to survive the famine. Literally every other wet nurse had rejected the orphan child.
Section 2. Halima's blessed choice. Now, what's really interesting about this is her mindset. This was a moment of profound vulnerability, but history tells us it was the ultimate pivot point. Halima had absolutely no wealth. The animal she rode into Mecca was so weak from the drought it could barely walk. She could have just packed up and gone home empty-handed. But she couldn't bear the thought of leaving without a child. So she decided to adopt the orphan prophet, peace be upon him, placing her ultimate trust, her tawakkul, entirely in Allah. Taking him wasn't an act of helpless resignation, right? It was a massive act of profound faith. In reality, she was being divinely selected for the greatest honor imaginable.
Section 3. Descent of Blessings and Miracles.
The exact second she makes this fateful choice, boom, the desperate tone of their reality just shatters. It's instantly replaced by this overwhelming, massive shift into pure abundance. Let's look at this unbroken chain of miracles that kicked off the very moment the mercy to the world's peace be upon him stepped into her life. First off, the physical darkness of her home was banished. Second, an immediate abundance of milk. Third, a total physical transformation of her weak camel. And fourth, an unprecedented wave of blessings upon her livestock. Let's break these down one by one, because the details here are just fascinating.
Connecting back to our opening hook, the light. The first night back in the desert, Halima's home was glowing so brightly that the neighbors were completely bewildered. They actually came over the next morning asking her how on earth she managed to buy expensive oil for lamps in the middle of a crippling famine. Halima had to explain that they hadn't bought any oil at all. The entire home was illuminated purely by the nur, the radiant light, from the blessed face of the orphan child she had brought home. The physical darkness of their poverty? Vanquished, just like that.
But the miracles were also deeply physical and immediate. Before bringing the prophet, peace be upon him, into her care, Halima's chest was completely dry due to severe malnutrition. Her own biological infant was crying constantly from hunger, keeping them awake all night in total distress. Yet the literal moment the prophet, peace be upon him, arrived, Allah caused her chest to instantly fill with rich milk. Both the prophet and his new foster brother drank until they were completely full. And for the first time in what felt like forever, the house was quiet. Both babies and the totally exhausted parents finally slept in absolute blissful peace.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how far-reaching this divine blessing was. It extended to everything they owned. Consider the state of Halima's camel. Before adopting the orphan, this poor creature was so exhausted and weak from the drought that it severely lagged behind the entire caravan traveling back to Banu Saad. But on the journey back, after the prophet, peace be upon him, was mounted on it, the camel suddenly surged with this vital energy. Actually, scratch that. It wasn't just keeping up, it was literally sprinting past the caravan. The other wet nurses were staring in absolute amazement, asking if this was even the same animal she had ridden into the city.
And no way did it stop there. Back in the desert, the famine was still raging for everyone else. Yet, when Halima's sheep would go out to graze in the barren lands, they would return in the evening totally satisfied, with their udders practically bursting with milk. Her neighbors were stunned. They even told their shepherds, "Hey, go follow Halima's flocks and graze our sheep in the exact same spots." But it didn't work. The neighbor's sheep would return just as hungry and dry as before. You see, the barakah, the divine blessing, it wasn't in the patches of dry grass. The blessing was strictly and exclusively tied to the presence of the prophet, peace be upon him, in Halima's household.
Section 4. The event of Sharah Sadr, the cleansing of the heart.
Now, as we move forward in the timeline, I want to pose a question directly to you. What great spiritual event occurred out there in the quiet of the desert when the prophet, peace be upon him, was just a young boy of about 4 or 5 years old? Take a moment to really think about the spiritual preparation required for the man who would carry the final message to humanity.
The answer is the magnificent event of Sharah Sadr, the cleansing of the heart. As recorded in Sahih Muslim, the young prophet was out grazing sheep when this extraordinary encounter took place. The archangel Jibril, or Gabriel, descended from the heavens. He gently laid the young boy down and miraculously opened his blessed chest. Jibril took out his heart and washed it thoroughly with the holy water of Zamzam. During this highly delicate, deeply sacred event, any whisper of worldly impurity or vulnerability to the whispers of Satan was physically and spiritually removed forever before his chest was sealed once again.
Now, why this matters is absolutely crucial. This wasn't just a miraculous occurrence, it was a divine testimony. It demonstrates that Allah was actively preparing his messenger from the very beginning. The one chosen to bear the incredible weight of prophethood and guide humanity was protected, nurtured, and completely purified from all worldly pollution, right from his childhood. His heart was made a vessel pure enough to one day receive the Quran.
Section 5. Return to Mecca and Message. Following this incredible spiritual climax, the desert chapter came to a bittersweet close. For 5 years, the prophet, peace be upon him, had brought boundless life, light, and sustenance back into Halima's world. Her desolate reality had literally been transformed into a paradise of blessings. But she knew that this child was a sacred trust. With a heavy and utterly heartbroken spirit, Halima Sa'dia traveled back to Mecca to return the young boy to his loving mother, Hazrat Aminah. She handed back the greatest blessing she would ever know, forever changed by the orphan who illuminated her home.
And that brings us to the core takeaway from this incredibly rich explainer. Where Allah's mercy exists, deprivation simply vanishes. The story of Banu Saad proves that earthly circumstances, like a severe drought or absolute poverty, mean absolutely nothing when divine barakah enters the picture. I hope this deep dive into the Prophet's early miracles has left you as awe-inspired as I am. So, how does recognizing these early signs of prophethood change your perspective on his life's mission? Think on that for a bit. And hey, if you want to keep exploring these beautiful histories, be sure to subscribe for more animated Quranic tales. Thank you so much for learning with us today, and we'll see you in the next explainer.